Yeah, we had another evacuation last year with Hurricane Matthew, where we moved the planes again to Auburn. That's our first time moving into Auburn, and we have a good relationship with them through previous connections, and we moved it again this year to Auburn. So we learned from our first one, and we made a great evacuation on both of them.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on Aviation News Talk for a Newsmakers Edition, where we talk to people who are making the news. All this week, we're talking about Hurricane Harvey and Irma and how general aviation pilots are responding in various ways to the storm. And in a moment, we'll be sitting down with Veenen Udayan, an instructor pilot at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida, who was a team leader for an evacuation flight to move Embry's 63 aircraft out of the path of Hurricane Irma and relocate them at Auburn University Airport and at Atlantic Aviation at the Birmingham Airport, both in Alabama. So start your engines because this Newsmakers edition starts now. Welcome to Aviation News Talk, where we talk about everything related to general aviation. I'm Max Trescott, and you probably know by now that for this week, we've ditched our usual weekly format in which we share pilot safety tips and general aviation news from around the world. And because of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma, we're releasing our shows more frequently, and we're focusing on how general aviation pilots are responding to these disasters. Earlier in the week, we had shows about Operation Airdrop, which flew 250,000 pounds of supplies into 32 Texas airports. And yesterday, we spoke with Stan Brock, the founder of Remote Area Medical, which is gearing up to fly relief supplies into the Caribbean. Now, earlier today, I talked with Veenen Udayan about an evacuation of a different type, getting more than 60 airplanes out of harm's way before Irma struck. Now let me tell you a little bit about Veenen. He's originally from South Africa, where he attended school through high school, but then he came to the United States to attend Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where he received a BS in Aeronautical Science and later an MBA. He's currently an instructor pilot at Embry-Riddle, and he was one of the team leaders of the evacuation flight that moved over 40 airplanes out of Daytona Beach prior to Hurricane Irma. Well, Veenen, I'd like to officially welcome you to the Aviation News Talk podcast. We're very happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So some of our listeners are going to be familiar with Embry-Riddle, but we've got listeners around the world, and some of them probably won't be. Can you take just a moment and tell us about Embry-Riddle for folks who might be interested in it?
Sure. Well, Embry-Riddle is one of the largest aerospace and aviation universities in the world. Currently, we have 3 campuses, 2 residential campuses, and then 1 online campus, which is worldwide. So we have a campus in Daytona Beach, a residential campus in Daytona Beach, a residential campus in Prescott, Arizona, and then obviously the World Online, where people take classes online and through satellite campuses around the world.
And I guess the Daytona Beach is obviously the largest one there. You're originally from South Africa. How did you even become aware of the school, and what made you decide to attend?
I've always wanted to be a pilot, and I was going to go through the South African Airways Cadet program. But in high school, we had a college exposition, and the United States consulate was there talking about education in the United States. And I picked up one of these books about colleges in the U.S., and I was just flipping through it one night and came across Embry-Riddle. I actually didn't know about it. Did my research. I found out that's the university I want to attend. So got all the documentation ready and everything and applied and got accepted. And over here, and I don't regret any moment of it.
That's great. Well, sounds like it's worked out well for you. So not only have you gotten 2 degrees from the university, you're now teaching there. Tell us what kind of teaching you do.
Sure. I started off as an instructor pilot. I obviously taught Part 141 and Part 142 students, which different types of regulations pertain to them in terms of what they require to be eligible for the different type of certification. So I started that as a flight instructor. Then I started teaching. I moved on to flight standards. I'm a check airman now, an assistant manager of flight standards. And I also teach the CFI ground labs currently.
Wow, so that keeps you pretty busy, I would imagine. So I remember years ago that the entire fleet at Embry-Riddle got destroyed through a freak tornado that occurred on Christmas Day 2006. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I wasn't. I actually came this semester after that, but effectively what happened on Christmas Day, we had a tornado that unfortunately went through some of our fleet and destroyed some of our planes. And we needed to, obviously, when we see something like that happen, there's nothing much we could have done about it because tornadoes can come out of nowhere. But in places like hurricanes, which is what's happening right now, that's something we could take into account and make sure that our planes were moved to a safe position.
Yeah, the amazing thing about the tornado, which wiped out, I guess, more than 40 airplanes, was that was on Christmas Day. And what I've read is that they had replaced all the airplanes through the help of Cessna, neighboring flight schools, alumni by January 16th. That's just remarkable.
Right. Yeah, we have great. What's fortunate is we have a really great group of alumni and a really great board of trustees and committee. So they worked together to make sure we had enough planes for the students to fly when they got back from holidays.
Yeah, it's just remarkable when you have a kind of a large network, how they can help you when you've got a problem of some kind. Well, this is not the first time you've had a hurricane evacuation flight, is it?
Yeah, we had another evacuation last year with Hurricane Matthew, where we moved the planes again to Auburn. That's our first time moving it to Auburn, and we have a good relationship with them through previous connections, and we moved it again this year to Auburn. So we learned from our first one, and we made a great evacuation on both of them.
Well, I first became aware of this on Twitter when I saw a picture that was taken on one of the the flight tracking systems that showed this really long string of aircraft headed to the northwest out of Daytona Beach, and the comment on it said that it was Embry-Riddle evacuating their fleet. So, tell us a little bit about that. How long did you have to plan the flight? How much flight planning was done prior to that?
Well, it's quite an extensive process. What happens is that our flight department chairman, chief flight instructor, dispatch manager, president of the university, they talk to the risk management guys too, and it starts early. We know that a hurricane is coming. Projected paths are coming towards us, so the committee gets together and figures out the risk level, and if they determine that it's going to be a risk to our aircraft, then we'll notify. Well, the flight department chairman and the chief flight instructor will notify some of the evacuation team leaders. We'll have a meeting before, and we'll discuss plans, discuss the airport, discuss routing, and also potential assignments. What happened this time is that last time we evacuated all the planes to Auburn. This time, most of the planes went to Auburn, Alabama, and some planes went to Birmingham, Alabama, just because there was not enough hotels in Auburn. So it's quite an extensive process in the beginning, obviously, because we want to make the safest decision possible. We have a lot of airplanes to move, so safety is the key here. So it starts pretty early, and if we can figure out that it is going to be, somewhat of a threat, we don't wait till the last minute. As soon as we can figure out some sort of a threat, we'll start the process. And if we are going to move forward with the evacuation, we'll notify all the flight instructors who signed up to be evacuation pilots. And we'll create a meeting with all of them, a mass meeting, discuss all the procedures, and then we'll, discuss routes again, altitudes, flight planning. We also get together with, in our case, Daytona Beach. We have to get with Daytona Beach Air Traffic Control, with Jacksonville Center, with Atlanta Center, and figure out what's the best way to get our airplane safely to the destination, and what's the most efficient way to get the planes there. So quite an extensive process, but it's all to take safety into account.
So you mentioned CFIs. Every pilot of every aircraft was a CFI, I guess, then? And did they bring anybody else along with them, or were they just going by themselves for the most part?
Every pilot is an instructor for us. Every evacuation pilot works for us as a flight instructor. We give them ample time to get their houses, if they live in a house, get their house ready, make arrangements for families, if they have family, immediate family here, and if they have to get pets out. So they make all the arrangements for them, and then once they've made those arrangements, hopefully it'll take them a day or two, we'll move them. We'll start talking about a date to move the planes.
So Auburn is Auburn University, I guess, in Alabama, and that's probably about 300 and some miles to the northwest?
Yeah, typically about 3-hour flight for the Cessnas and about a 2-hour flight for the Diamonds, the DA-42s that we have. Okay.
Now, you left pretty early in the morning. How did you guys decide to leave at that time of day?
Well, something that we have to take into consideration is that there's a lot of other planes that are evacuating, and we have quite a lot of planes to evacuate. So when we're all filing IFR, to get to a position, it's just easier for us to file IFR just so that everything can be organized. If we had to go in, start launching at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., we get in the middle of all the other traffic. And Jack's Center, Atlanta Center, Daytona Tracon, they can only take so many airplanes. So to minimize the effect on the national airspace system and to make sure our airplanes are efficiently getting to their position, we launch early in the morning so that, like I said, we get there safely, we'll get there all together, and we're not congesting the national airspace system too much.
All right. And let's be fair, it was not really early in the morning. It was kind of middle of the night. What time did you leave?
Well, we had different launches. We launched the Diamonds first because they were the fastest. The Diamonds launched at 2 a.m. and the Cessnas it was actually the Diamonds, then the Arrows, the Piper Arrows, and then the Cessnas that started launching. So we went fastest to slowest. I think the last Cessna left at about 5 a.m. if I'm not mistaken, and that was the last Cessna to get into Auburn.
Okay, so everybody was IFR, so no formation flying involved.
No formation flying.
So I actually have a survey that's been running for just about a month, and we're going to do a future episode talking about flight planning and what flight planning tools people use. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what flight planning tools you used for briefing this flight and planning this flight?
Okay, so quite a lot of stuff. Obviously, we use all the resources that we have at the university. We have a lot of very bright and smart pilots, safe pilots. So we put all of those heads together and we figure out what the best way to get out. In terms of actual hard tools, we use ForeFlight quite extensively in the planning process, just because it's at your fingertips on your iPad. You have everything available to you. If you have Wi-Fi, you can download everything you need, and then as soon as you're off Wi-Fi, you have it on your iPad. So we use that quite extensively, and then we have other planning tools like weather services and our own weather products app, just to verify the weather on the way there. So typically it's ForeFlight, and then just like normal stuff, sectionals, plotters, E6Bs, planning our route over there.
And how are you getting your weather when you're in flight?
On our airplanes, we have weather data that uploads to our aircraft that it shows, where the rain is. We don't have a weather radar on board per se, but we have weather that's uploaded, and typically the range between 1 minute old to 10 minutes old, but we just have an idea of where the weather is.
I understand. So you're saying that you're using either something like Sirius XM weather or perhaps ADSB, FISB weather?
Yeah, it's ADSB. That's what we're using. We're not using Sirius XM weather.
And what's the age of most of the aircraft? Are they mostly glass cockpit aircraft at this point, or do you have older round gauge aircraft? What's the mix in the fleet?
Our entire fleet now is glass cockpits. Our Cessnas and Diamonds are running the G1000 system, and our Arrows are running the G500 system.
Okay. Now, you just came back this morning from Auburn back to Daytona Beach. Anything remarkable about the trip either way, either going up there on Saturday or coming back today?
Nothing, out of the ordinary. What was unique about Auburn is that Auburn's an uncontrolled airport. So getting 42 aircraft out of Auburn posed a logistical kind of, I wouldn't say a problem, it's just more of a unique option here where we had to make sure as pilots ourselves we're spacing out per the requirements of ATC. So what we did last night is the team was called Atlanta Center. Our chief flight instructor called Jacksonville Center and Daytona Approach, and just figured out how they want us to do this. And what they came up with, that we'd space ourselves at 5-minute intervals just to give ATC enough time to coordinate and move our airplane safely. Auburn, being an uncontrolled airport, didn't have a control tower, but what was great about Auburn is it had a clearance delivery frequency for Atlanta that we could raise on the ground. So effectively what we did is we sent airplanes 5 at a time together, and when the first aircraft was number 1, he would call Atlanta clearance, get his clearance or her clearance, and then once they've got their clearance and were released for IFR, some of the airplanes had to wait for release. They would take off, and as soon as the first plane was wheels up, the next plane in line would then call Atlanta clearance and get their clearance and take off in 5 minutes after the first departure. So that was a unique problem, and something interesting I found out through some of the other pilots, just personal private pilots flying in, they had issues with airports not having fuel. I guess there were so many airplanes coming outside of Florida that some of the airports ran out of fuel.
Yep, I guess that's pretty common after a hurricane to have a shortage of fuel. Now, you said that you were a team leader. What are the responsibilities of the team leaders, and how many planes is a leader responsible for?
Well, there's no set number. No, last year, we had all 60 aircraft go to Auburn, and there were two main team leaders and 2 assists. This year, it was the same thing. We had 2 team leaders, myself and another standards pilot. And then 2 other standards pilots were our assists. One team leader, he took his planes with another assist to Birmingham, and I took our airplanes. There's about 40 for my fleet to Auburn, and I had another assist from another standards pilot.
Now, looking back on this, anything you do different if you have to do this again?
This one ran really smoothly. I know you asked about some of the things that team leaders have to do. Is one of the things is to make sure that we check into the hotels, that we have the vans ready, we transport the pilots, to the hotels, make sure everyone's basically checked in, has a warm bed and food for the night, and then once we're in Auburn, the team leaders will then, coordinate with all the flight instructors that were there, making sure that everyone is getting to where they need to be. We'll make sure they get transported for lunch, dinner, and just basic needs. In terms of anything different, there was a lot of planning that went into this process, and we were lucky enough that we had a maintenance technician with us who sorted out any problems that we had, if we did, and it went very smoothly. So there's actually nothing really I would do different on this one.
Now, I saw you posted a photo on Facebook this morning on the Embry-Riddle site, which showed a large conference room with a lot of things spread on a big table. What was all the material on the table there?
Oh, those were our airplane clipboards. So that was just showing how many planes were getting out and that the airplanes were ready to go, and we're bringing it back for the students so they could start their flight training as soon as possible.
Yep, I got it. And what was the reception like at Auburn? It sounds to me like you were probably there for 4 nights. What did you do while you were there?
Well, reception was very warm. We have a great relationship with Auburn University. They were going above and beyond to make sure that our pilots and airplanes were safe. They've shown us so much hospitality. We can never be grateful enough for what they've done. There was a couple of people like Bill Hutto, who's the airport manager, and Todd, who was just the operations manager. They did an outstanding job, and we can never thank them enough. And once we were there, they told us all the stuff that the instructors could do. There was restaurants downtown, some of the university activities. There was a basketball game, a volleyball game they could do, and I think some of the flight instructors actually picked up games of ultimate frisbee and stuff with other students there. So it was a very warm reception, and it's a great city, Auburn, and the university itself is amazing. So, the funny thing is we're in the same region as them in terms of the flight teams. Our flight team competes against their flight team. But none of that was shown when we went there. It was just it's like a family, an aviation flying family.
Yes, everybody wants to do their best at the intercollegiate national flying competition, but I can see how at a time like this, everybody's just a friend.
Right. It is, and the folks at Auburn definitely showed us that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. In tough times, everybody seems to come together. Well, for folks who are listening who might be interested in learning more about Embry-Riddle, where would you suggest they go online to find out more information?
Definitely the university's website, erau.edu, is a great way to find out more about the university. There's 4 different types of colleges, so you don't have to be, if you don't want to be a pilot, there's degrees in management, there's degrees in engineering, arts and sciences. So we have 4 different colleges, and the website will be a great place to start your research, and that's where I started my research.
Yeah, and years ago, I used to always think of Embry-Riddle as primarily for pilots. I was really surprised a few years ago to learn that you graduate more aeronautical engineers every year than any other university.
Right, and we're the number 1 aerospace engineering school in the world, so that's our flagship, and all our other degrees are fantastic. I started as an aviation degree. I did my Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Science, and then I did my MBA just to, diversify my education. And it's a great university, and can never be thankful for what they've provided for me.
Any thoughts about your future aviation plans and career? I mean, is this where you want to stay and what you want to do, or do you have something else in mind ultimately?
Well, the ultimate goal is always to be an airline pilot. I've stayed here longer than most flying instructors. Our average age of a flying instructor here lasts about approximately 2 years before they move off to the airline. So I've been at the university since 2011 working. I started in 2007 as a student and started working in 2011. And the ultimate goal at some point, we'll be the airlines when the time comes.
Well, I'm sure any airline would be happy to have you there, especially with all the experience you have in so many different aviation activities.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, great. Anything more you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap things up?
One of the biggest things about a hurricane evacuation is the planning that goes into it. You don't want to leave it until the last minute. Nothing is worth damaging the airplane and your life, obviously. So, the best thing is get out early and make sure you're safe. The earlier, the better it is. There's always going to be an airport available for you to go to and have fuel. Obviously, sometimes the uncertainty of where the hurricane is going causes a little bit of a problem. But, knowing prevailing winds and where the normal movement goes to, the early planning gets you out safe. And that's the most important thing.
And that's probably true for just about any kind of flight, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, you don't want to show up at the airport and then make a plan. That's a little late.
Nope.
Well, good. Veenen, thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences, and good luck in all your future aviation career.
Thanks for having me out there, and good luck to you with everything else in your show. I've started listening to some of your stuff, and it's really great stuff.
Great. Thank you. And one final thought about the evacuation flight. As I mentioned earlier, I became aware of this hurricane evacuation flight when I saw an ATC screenshot that showed a long line of airplanes stretched across Florida en route to Auburn University Regional Airport. Now, you'll really want to see this shot. The planes are so close together in line, they look like a zipper just kind of running across Florida. Anyway, right after I saw that on Saturday, I posted the image on my Patreon page, where I've been posting a number of general aviation news stories, many of them related to hurricanes Harvey and Irma. So, for example, this morning, I posted a photo of an FAA mobile control tower that was disembarking from the back of a U.S. Air Force C-17 that had just landed in St. Thomas at 6:15 this morning. Now, it took just a little over 3 hours, and they had that tower up in operation. Now, the mobile tower is pretty cool. It's equipped with a generator, an air conditioner. It's got 4 radios for air traffic controllers to use, and it's got instruments to measure the barometric pressure as well as the wind speed and direction. And it was pretty important to get that tower there quickly because the existing tower had been badly damaged by Irma, and for the last few days, the tower controllers there were working out of a tent at the airport. Now, this is really a fascinating picture of this tower. It's mounted on a custom trailer, and it's being backed out of a C-17 by the truck that goes with it. So if you'd like to see that picture or any of the other news stories I've posted, just open a web browser and type aviationnewstalk.com/awesome and go ahead and look around the site while you're there. And if you'd like to help support this show, go ahead and become one of our Patreon sponsors, and you can do that by signing up for as little as $2 a month, and that cost will be billed to your credit card. And there are lots of cool benefits for contributions at higher dollar amounts. And for all new Patreon sponsors, I'll read your name on the show after you first sign up. And if you have any hurricane-related general aviation news stories of any kind or other topics you'd like to see us cover on the show, please send me an email. Just go to aviationnewstalk.com and click on the Contact tab at the top of the page. And don't forget, we also have a survey running this month. We just heard about some of the flight planning tools used by the Embry-Riddle Evacuation flight team. Well, for over a month now, our survey has been collecting information from our listeners about how they flight plan longer trips. So please go ahead and take the survey at aviationnewstalk.com/survey. And you'll want to do that in the next week or two because pretty soon I'm going to close out that survey and we'll do a show in which we talk about the flight planning tools that you use. And as I always tell you, don't forget, if you're in the market for either a used Cirrus or a new one, please contact me early in the process. Okay, I can help you understand some of the factors in deciding whether to go new versus used. I specialize in the Cirrus and work with people around the country. And if you like this show, or if you love it, please show your friends how to find it on their smartphone. Until next time, fly safely, have fun, and keep the blue side up.